Welcome to Dear Dr. Mao. Today's episode is part 2 of the hidden health dangers of mold exposure. Later on in the episode, I will share with you how to prevent mold exposure in your home and work, and treatment for inflammatory response brought on by mycotoxins due to mold exposure. Before we begin this episode, I'd like to talk about mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are toxic chemicals produced by certain fungi that are capable of causing disease and even death. The most common, well-known of mycotoxins from Aspergillus causing human illness is aflatoxin, which is found in soil, decaying vegetation, and improperly stored grains, nuts, and seeds. Aflatoxin in peanuts may be partly responsible as a contributor to the anaphylactic shock in some children. It so happens that aflatoxin is one of the most carcinogenic substances known, and children are particularly affected by aflatoxin exposure, which is associated with stunted growth, delayed development, liver damage, and liver cancer. Adults have higher tolerance, but are also at risk. Of course, there are many mycotoxins from different mold species that cause diseases. Now, most people who get exposed to mycotoxins as a result of mold exposure develop inflammatory response in their bodies. For many, after being removed from the moldy environment, the inflammation usually subsides. But for about a quarter of the population, however, the inflammatory response to mycotoxins can become chronic and even trigger autoimmune disease. The reason is that the majority of the population, the body's detoxification process is able to clear those mycotoxins with minor long-term consequences. However, approximately 24% of the population possesses a genetic determinant known as HLA type that leaves them susceptible to mycotoxin-triggered immune dysfunction. Before we go further, I need to explain what HLA type is. HLA stands for human leukocyte antigen, which are proteins on the surface of your white blood cells, your body's troops that identify which cells are your own and which are foreign. As an analogy, you can visualize the HLA proteins as different color codes on the cell. Our own cells are programmed to recognize certain patterns of colors that belong to us. For example, you could imagine that your own HLA type includes a red, blue, and white. HLA typing assesses the particular HLA gene that you have inherited, meaning your cell's color codes. Because there are a number of different HLA genes as well as different variations of these genes, there are many different possible color combinations that together make up your specific HLA type. Now, if an immune cell notices a cell with, say, a purple HLA color code, it would send off an alarm bell. That warns the cell that it might be seeing something potentially dangerous, like a virus or mycotoxins. This might trigger the immune system to attack the cell. The HLA system plays an important role in immune defense. As you can imagine, is also critical in situations of organ transplant to have an HLA match. If the immune system targets the donated tissue as foreign, meaning it has the wrong color codes, it may attack and damage the donated tissue. That's why it's important for people to receive donated tissue that has as many matching HLA proteins or the matching color combinations as possible to avoid rejection. So what happens when an individual with one of the susceptible HLA types is exposed to large amounts of mycotoxins from mold? Well, the immune dysfunction that is triggered results in unrelated symptoms that are often misdiagnosed as conditions such as fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, anxiety, depression, leaky gut, and even chronic Lyme disease. The reason why this is happening is due to increased autoimmune response, allergies to foods and environmental triggers, excessive cytokine production leading to multiple tissue inflammation, and immune suppression, often leading to persistent infections or frequent acute infections. Now, I've spent my 36-year career in healthcare treating patients with these complex inflammatory response conditions that target multiple systems. I've watched my patients go from one specialist to another, whose approach have been a whack-a-mole at best because patient symptoms are all over the map across many systems such as digestive, neurological, hormonal, musculoskeletal, rheumatological, immunological, etc. That doctors are only able to offer temporary symptomatic relief to their particular specialty, but not resolution of the whole syndrome of inflammatory response because the cause or the trigger remains. At Dollar Wellness, we've been successful in treating patients suffering from chronic inflammatory response syndrome because we recognize that the underlying trigger for the fire that is blazing through the body can usually be traced to mycotoxins from fungal infections and other biotoxins produced by viral, bacterial, and parasitic infections. Correspondingly, we carefully administer our medical detoxification protocol to these patients while working on supporting organ functions and restoring health. Since 50% of buildings in the U.S. has had a history of water damage or moisture intrusion, we are seeing more and more patients present inflammatory conditions of unknown origin that may very well be triggered by mycotoxins. Obviously, mold exposure-induced inflammatory response will vary from person to person, and each case must be evaluated and treatment protocols must be personalized to fit the needs of each patient. If you or someone you know that's suffering from endless medical problems arising from mold exposure, contact any of our doctors for more information or by visiting dialofwellness.com. Naturally, it's better to prevent moisture buildup than to mop up the mess in the aftermath of mold exposure. Now, here are 5 mold prevention tips. First, eliminate sources of dampness in basements such as roof leaks, pipe leaks, or groundwater seepage. Regularly inspect thoroughly your house and repair any leaks immediately. 2. Use a dehumidifier in any area of your home that smells musty or damp. Keep your humidity level below 50%. Remember to clean the collection bucket and condensation coils regularly. A patient who lived by the beach told me that her dehumidifier produces 2 gallons of water every 24 hours. Now, that's heavy dampness. 3. Consider installing central air conditioning with high-efficiency particulate air HEPA filtered attachment, along with a germicidal UVC bulb. The HEPA filter can trap mold spores from outdoor air before they circulate inside your home, and the ultraviolet light will destroy any fungal, bacterial, and viral particles. That is what we've installed in our new office. Change filters on your furnace and air conditioning regularly, and have forced air heating ducts inspected and, if necessary, cleaned. 4. Be sure all bathrooms are properly ventilated and run the ventilation fan during a shower or bath and immediately after to dry the air. Now, if you don't have a ventilation fan, open a window or door while you're showering or bathing. 5, or last point here, keep groundwater drainage away from a house by removing leaves and vegetation from around the foundation and cleaning out rain gutters frequently. In fact, don't plant anything right up against the house, and be sure that sprinklers spray water away and not towards the house. On the subject of plants, don't have plants in your bedroom, as organic plant containers made from straw, wicker, or hemp can collect moisture. Drain the pots after watering to prevent water from collecting and therefore mold growing. In summary, practice prevention when it comes to mold, and don't underestimate the hidden health dangers of mold and the associated chronic inflammatory response syndrome. If you or someone you know have been exposed to mold and are experiencing unexplained symptoms of inflammation, don't wait. Call us immediately so that the potential mycotoxins is eliminated as quickly as possible and inflammation extinguished before widespread health damage occurs. I hope you found today's episode helpful. Tune in next time when I'll be talking about how well you are aging based on your fertility parameters for both men and women. Until then, live long, live strong, and live happy.